Yep.
Yeah.
Full battery. I just want you to know that things are going swimmingly right now in my.
Today?
I just want you to know.
Today
that,
at this
because
point in life?
You've had a
At this
difficult.
point in time? Oh, so that's supposed to make me feel better because you had a good
I just
day?
want you to know I'm having
Okay, we're late. To bring, I don't know what I'd like to do. Call to order the Village of Riverwoods Board of Trustees meeting. Will you please stand with me and say the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Ford.
Present.
Trustee Clayton.
Here.
Trustee Dickon. Here. Trustee Eastman.
Here.
Trustee Hollander.
Here.
Trustee Jamerson is absent and Trustee Smith is absent, but we have a quorum.
Terrific. Thank you very much. First order of business is approval of the minutes of the Board of Trustees meeting of September 17th. Do I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions, suggestions, edits? Thank you. Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Next, we have the Finance Director's report. We'll start with the approval of bills. Do I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Dickon.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Director Vasquez, your report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few items for tonight's report. The finance workshop is scheduled for 6 p.m. before the next board meeting on October 15th. We will be looking at the status of the major funds and projecting out over the next 5 years, including capital projects. We will order sandwiches similar to what we did last year. Earlier this year, when I was researching other health insurance options for the village, I discovered that our full-time IMRF employees have access to a voluntary group decreasing term life insurance policy called NCPERS. This plan is paid for with a deduction from the employee's paycheck and does not have an additional cost to the village. When I discovered we had access to this plan earlier in the year, it was already past the open enrollment period. Open enrollment for this plan starts today and goes through the end of November. I will be sending out information to our full-time staff to make them aware of this program and how to sign up should they decide that they want that coverage. I recently attended the Illinois Government Finance Officers Association annual conference down in Springfield. Topics discussed included items across a wide range from bond issuance and compliance to Government Accounting Standards Board pronouncements that are on the horizon that might affect how we prepare future audits. Attendance is generally made up of other finance directors and municipal staff, vendors, banks, others that could be helpful to talk to and build relationships with. Also later this month, our accounting manager, Moses Diaz, will be attending a user conference for our accounting software, BS&A. BS&A is an incredible tool we have at our disposal, and as a heavy user, he will benefit from seeing how other villages make use of it, as well as learning about new updates that can help with our efficiency and reporting. That's all I have for tonight.
Are there any questions for our finance director? Thank you. Next item of business is the treasurer's report. Hal is not with us this evening. Next is our Director of Community Services report. Director Witt, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few items. Status of the administrative adjudication activities. We have 2 cases which have been carried over for the last 2 months. We believe we have closure on one with strictly a payment of a fine due, and then a second one to be discussed in detail. With regard to roadway projects, The county has indicated that Boulder Construction is going to restart the work at the intersection of Deerfield and Saunders Road. The delay was the county was waiting for a revised permit to be issued by IDOT. They got that about a week and a half ago. So Boulder is supposed to start yet this week. Work will continue, be finished sometime this fall. Essentially what they're doing is they're boring and jacking the water main under the intersection of Saunders Road and Deerfield, starting at the police department. They'll work toward the kitty corner. Once that's done, they will clean up and remove all that wonderful landscaping equipment that they have there. All the backhoes, the loaders, all the excess equipment, they'll clean that out and we'll get back to normal. The other thing on the same project, we have discovered that there is a water main leak, which has been occurring for evidently several weeks in roughly the 1600 block of Saunders Road on the east side. It is not, excuse me, something that is a torrential leak. It is a very slow leak, but nonetheless, it is a leak. We've been trying to locate it. We were not able to do that with sounding techniques. So they will be starting to do some work with the vacuum machine to suck up the ground so that we can actually locate where the leak is coming from. We don't know whether or not it's our responsibility or the county's or maybe a combination thereof, but I firmly believe that this will probably be resting in the county's realm. It is in a location where there was a change in direction of the pipe that was installed by the contractor, and some of the landscaping equipment, one of the stabilizer legs was actually set down in the area that we believe the leak is, but we probably won't know that for another couple of days. So further update as soon as we know.
Are there any questions for our director?
I have a
Oh, Trustee Diggin, please.
quick question. Yeah, so I was driving on Deerfield turning onto Saunders. There's certainly quite a bit of activity. I'm wondering, could it be appropriate to add something to our newsletter, at least notifying folks to expect delays? It was a little busy this afternoon. And maybe an anticipated timeline, if any?
I'm not certain that we're going to really see any delays. Certainly, we don't know yet with regard to the leak, how that will occur. That's going to be dependent upon whether or not the leak is actually in the right of way or if it's underneath the street.
No, I'm talking about the Deerfield Saunders corner.
Understand, but I'm just trying to cover both items because the second is probably the one that would probably give more rise to some kind of delay. So once we determine whether or not that leak is underneath the roadway, then I'll make notification that there is potential for, rerouting of traffic for a day or two at that point. As far as any delays with regard to the work at the intersection, really shouldn't expect any because they're going to be doing bore pits in the right of way and they're actually going to be tunneling underneath the street. So there should be no surface work occurring at this point. If we determine that there will be some kind of delay, then we'll certainly get something out in the newsletter.
So today was the busiest day of all. Am I understanding that correctly? Because there were delays today. Like there was quite a bit of traffic on that corner.
Okay. I'll double check with the county and see what they anticipate.
Thank you.
Hey, I think we always, with its a health and safety thing, I think we would always have access to the broadband and do an email blast that way too, as well. Are there any other questions for our director? Okay, thank you. Moving on to consultants report, village attorney, please.
It's not often that I can report to the board that the village has been sued, but we have been, but in a very minor capacity. The county has sued a resident of the village in connection with a condemnation. They're trying to take part of the right of way, I think, for Deerfield Road and maybe as well some area for detention. They've been preparing or have been in the process of preparing to file lawsuits in a couple of other instances where they need property and they haven't been able to secure a voluntary cooperation. The reason the village was named was simply that the property was in a special service area. The ordinance creating special service areas has to be recorded by state law. So when they did a title search and necessary parties Village of Riverwoods came up, and they thought that the village had to be named as a necessary party. I talked with the state's attorney. They completely understand that it's a sort of artificial situation, and prepared a disclaimer of interest and suggested that if the village, if I'm authorized to sign it and deliver it, they'll dismiss us out of the lawsuit. Essentially, what that means is that the village is acknowledging that we're not expecting to participate in any of the award that is ultimately decided in the lawsuit. Because in a condemnation case, essentially, um, it becomes what is the amount that's going to be paid. It's they have the right to take the property for this purpose. So I didn't think there was an issue, but I thought I would mention it to the board just to make sure you're all on board. It was the state's attorney was kind enough to suggest the format for me. I've already looked at it, thought it was fine. If I get it to the state's attorney, they will file it for us and get us dismissed out of the lawsuit. So um, not every case will go this easily. I don't want you to get the wrong idea.
Any questions? Trustee Clayton, please.
Just a couple things that we had on the back burner, the aggregation status and the Montessori garage. Any status reports on those?
Okay, well, I do have a couple of things.
Oh, please go ahead. I was going to ask Trustee Clayton to be a little closer to the microphone. Thank you.
On aggregation, the supplier wrote to us, I think it was just yesterday, that they've decided not to do anything until later in December when new pricing might become better known. So they've not, we are negotiating in good faith, but our current negotiations are, let's just wait and see. So right now we're staying with the current pricing. With respect to Montessori, because Trustee Smith wasn't here tonight, we put it over. So I have prepared an ordinance that Director Wood has been looking at. We've been going over it to have ready for the board meeting.
That we extended the courtesy to Trustee Smith to put over that which he wanted to participate in, just as we do every time another trustee is not able to make a board meeting.
Look straight. So one other thing, so if I don't look over that way, later on in the agenda, we are going to be looking at the subdivision plat for Federal Life, but I just wanted to give a more generic update on the timing. The chairman of Federal Life reached out to us and said, they're having trouble getting they're trying to make sure that all of their software that processes all of their material is on physical servers right now. It's a fairly large set of computers they have on site. They're trying to get them all uploaded to the cloud. Federal Life has the right under the contract to extend the closing for up to 30 days. He suggested that we close and then lease the building back to him. I said, why don't we just be patient? If you need another 10 days, let us know what it's going to be. In the meantime, I wasn't sure how far along we would be in the subdivision plat process. So I said, we might be a little, in need of time as well. It turns out I don't think we will be, but there is a lag between getting a plat approved and getting all the signatures. Sometimes getting all the signatures from county officials and stuff takes a while. So basically, I wouldn't call it a handshake deal, but basically we said, okay, if we don't make October 15th, we'll make it as soon as we can. We're working with each other. If the board doesn't have a problem with that, we'll just sort of continue to work it that way. If they need a few days, won't be the end of the world for us. The county has put in process the mechanics of getting a check to us. They're hoping to get a check to us next week. So we should have funds from the county to help us complete the closing. And the rest of it is there's a detailed memo on the subdivision plat, so maybe we'll take it up later in the agenda if that's better.
Are there any questions for our attorney at this point? Thank you. Plan Commission report, please. Chair Brightcroft.
Good evening. I'll be very brief. The Plan Commission met on September the 26th. We voted to recommend approval of the plat of subdivision for the Federal Life property, and we will meet again on November the 7th. That is my report.
Are there any questions for our chair? Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Next item of business, zoning board of appeals report. Chair
It's really
Editor.
exciting to stand here and say that I have nothing to report, but that perhaps at the next meeting, I just might have something to report. And it remains to be seen if our applicant decides to make an appearance before the commission.
So stay tuned, right?
You got it. Stay tuned because
Okay.
this has been a very interesting 4-month cancellation ride.
I did see a sign go up today, Avia, AVIA, this evening over on the Brunch Factory sign. Anyone aware of that one? Yeah, just an FYI. Speaking of signs. Police report. Chief?
In addition to the activity that is in the packet, I just wanted to report to the board that we conducted alcohol and tobacco compliance checks at 7 businesses in Riverwoods on September 23rd. And I'm happy to report that none of them sold to our teenage agent. And that's all I have.
Are there any questions for our chief? Thank you, as always. Thank you. Fire district report, Chief Kruger isn't with us this evening. Information and items, comments from the president. Just wanted you to know that at this point, we are reviewing a proposal from Baxter Woodman for review of the stormwater project. We would like to find out if there is an ecological impact to some of the suggestions made in the report that was given to us to GHA. Our village ecologist and village forester, neither was involved in the production of the stormwater report at the onset. So we're reviewing that proposal and we'll bring that to the board when it's ready. The tree survey is finishing up. The hazardous tree survey is finishing up. If any one of you have issues that you would like specifically covered for the residential plan development, I know we spoke about that at the last meeting. Please remember that Director Witt raised his hand and would be happy to get those suggestions. And last but not least, the RRA event is coming up on the 26th. And if you noticed in our list of bills, there is a check for Traveling World of Reptiles. So this year's event should be a little interesting. And that's all I have. And next on the agenda is visitors wishing to address the board on items other than those that are on the agenda. And I believe we have a member here, a resident here, who is eager to address us. Please come forward and just state your name, please, and your comments. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Meg Redlewski.
Bring that a little closer.
Right.
There we go. Thank you so much.
Sure. RETELEWS like Sam, KI, and MAG. And I'm a resident of 2635 Hazelnut Lane. 2635. Yeah. All right, good. I believe the board has already received the petition that I have submitted on behalf of several residents 2 weeks ago. I submitted directly to multiple trustees. And Laura graciously last couple of weeks ago also addressed briefly my understanding is. So the reason I'm here is on behalf of multiple residents in the Hazelnut, Sherry, and Gemini Lane. We're all very deeply concerned with the burning activity that is happening in our neighborhood. And the burning activity is not just a nuisance, it's a deep concern for safety, for health, and for just general impact our quality of our lives. The neighbor that has moved in a couple of years ago started to burn debris, yard waste, everything that I think is possible to be burned, it's being burned. And it happens several times a week between March and early December. And it is pervasive and impossible to handle. I personally work from home, especially since the pandemic. So I do enjoy being outside and spending as much time as I can possibly do that, which is why it is so frustrating that I cannot literally breathe being outside. Moreover, during the construction twice, the smoke and I presume triggered alarm in our house. So the fire department showed up in our house in the middle of the night because we had windows open, which is very disturbing. So this is just part of the issue. The second issue, which I haven't submitted, but I figured I can talk about it now, is the leaf blowing and the disturbance and noise that's been happening pervasively, again, 4 to 6 hours a day, every other day. And so between those two um, activities, it is almost impossible to be outside. Multiple of us neighbors have addressed or tried to address the neighbor on Sherry Lane, and it has been a bit of an issue because things are not changing. I got a note from the wife of the individual and was told that I'm sorry, yeah, I'm going to talk to my husband, nothing changed. So I would really like the board to consider a potential change in the bylaws or some sort of a way to address the issue so it's not such a hindrance for multiple residents of the area that we live in.
We did receive your petition last, and we have had some conversation internally about the restrictions and so on. We are continuing to have those discussions. I can tell you that I know that our Director Witt and our village attorney have had recent discussions. And I believe that the board would need to take some action if it could. If I might ask our village attorney to comment on that, please.
The law says that people can burn landscape waste, not other kinds of waste, but landscape waste from their own property, landscape waste generated from their own property. That is, the state law permits it, but it doesn't prohibit villages, a home rule community in particular, from having our own ordinance. So we can be more restrictive than the state law. Many communities do prohibit leaf burning. Some prohibit it, except on certain days, not more than a certain number of hours. Some require a permit. So, staff can look out and say it's too windy today. We won't issue a permit, only for this day, or we won't issue a permit 5 days in a row. If you look around, you'll see that there are many different ways of addressing it. There are communities that ban it outright. And so far as I can see, that's perfectly acceptable. The village has that option of doing that. Years ago, when the topic came up, the village board at that time opted to regulate, the manner in which leaf burning was conducted. The piles had to be, in a sort of compact area. There had to be a water source nearby. They had to be attended. This is another level of complaint, and so it's a policy decision for the board.
Are there comments from the board at this point? Trustee Eastman, please.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I believe you had submitted some pictures of what was going on
Yes.
to the village. Can you figure out what sort of waste besides, is there any waste that's other than landscape waste that's being burned?
Sometimes it is. It's just the neighbors across from us on Gemini have actually submitted a picture, and I think they might have sent it directly, that there is an evidence that there is some waste. It's not the same extent, to be clear, as it was during the construction, where the flame was going 10 to 15 feet tall and wide,
Right.
Which was really scary. And multiple neighbors have called the police at that point. But still, the smoke that is just so pervasive right now that it's just impossible to breathe. And there's multiple complaints by the residents in the area who have autoimmune issues, who have lung issues. My both children had heart surgeries, and it's hard to be with them around.
So full disclosure, I'm on the other side on 590 Sherry, and I generally concur in what you're discussing, but I think where it feeds into, right, is the broader, do we need something that applies to everyone in the village? And if so, what form does that take, right?
Yeah,
I mean, in terms of what they,
that makes sense. From what I have observed, I'm a runner. I run every day, so I pass that area pretty regularly. They do not have access to water. It's often unattended, and
I
it just
would agree with that.
right.
Yeah. So I think it makes sense to kind of look at, do we need to make, what sort of revisions we need to make more broadly to the ordinance as it's currently written. That's
Trustee Clayton?
So in terms of next steps, what are the next steps with regard to this issue?
We need direction from the board. If the board says prepare a very broad ban on leaf burning, we can. If the board says regulate it in this fashion, we can. If the board says bring us 10 examples of neighboring communities and we'll look at other policies and see what we think works, we can do whatever the board wants.
Trustee Hollander?
I just did a quick search and I could not find it, but my memory says to me that there were a bunch of rules that required when you did burning. You had to have a clear area, you had to have water, you had to remain present throughout the burn. There were limitations. And I'm not sure if there were limitations in the time of the day that you were allowed to burn.
8 a.m. to 8 p.m. I checked.
Pardon?
8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yeah, so I know
So pretty much no restriction.
So we have a basis from which we can decide of whether we want to, how to modify it. And I agree. I think that we ought to take another look at it and see if we can't make it a little bit more neighbor friendly. I do think that based on the makeup of our community being a lot of trees and a lot of leaves and things that we do should continue to allow burning of the landscaping waste, but maybe we can tighten it up to make it a little bit easier for the neighbors.
Trustee Clayton, please.
I, for one, would like to see examples of what neighboring communities do.
Just a
Trustee
comment.
Dickon?
Yeah, and perhaps in terms of limitations, we could talk about frequency, right? Where you're saying that this is happening every day at all hours of the day, other than the limitations of time. Perhaps there's, I don't know, a number of days per week or.
Yeah,
Because if this is something that happens once every 3 months, you'd probably be
and this was
more tolerant.
I mean, this happens. We live in the neighborhood when that happens periodically, and it has never bothered us. But it became such a pervasive issue, obviously, that it's just literally impossible to be outside at all.
If I might add a twist, and I hope not. A point well taken, Trustee Hollander's point about, in a community with all the leaves and so forth. But I know that we have had the experience where it was a legal burning. It was during the day and, the area was cleared, but the smoke was incredible. We were across Deerfield Road from us and down about a quarter mile. So not a quarter mile, eighth of a mile. And so I know that gets to be difficult to monitor and it gets to be difficult to deal with. And I'm not sure if that's, how you go about making a law or making a rule or making a guidance on that. Trustee Eastman, please.
I guess maybe one more thought on that would be, I mean, I don't know how onerous this would be, but if you required some sort of permit with even a, minimal fee and application, would people, and also the other problem is enforcement, right? If you were to enforce the existing rules, right? Would that force someone where, it's a clear violation if they don't get the nominal permit? And it would also encourage people to maybe say, I'm going to do it once or twice, right? Because I'm going to incur some cost and I'm going to have to get the permit. Is that enough to, discourage it from happening frequently, but yet allowing people to do it? I don't know the answer. But I would like to see other municipalities erring on the side of making it not banned, but more restrictive.
Yeah. And how do you enforce it? Come over with a fire hose and.
Well, see, that's just it. I mean, in full disclosure, we dealt with the same issue, and I think we had contacted. But yeah, I mean, at one point it was, the flames were literally
Massive.
Yeah, they were massive. I mean, it truly was a fire hazard. So I think we had, I think we had called the village and reported it in some way.
Yeah, and multiple of us have done it, so
Yeah.
just out of concern.
I think we have some clear direction then from the board. We'll take a look at examples in other communities that might fit well with our. Trustee Hollander, did you have anything to add, please?
This probably isn't the time or place to work this issue, but I'm a little bit against having a permit for someone wanting to do a minor burn on the weekends. I mean, getting a permit, getting a response is a little onerous for everyone.
How do you do that?
Yeah. And we have to rely on our neighbors for some of our observation of our ordinances. We can't always monitor everything.
And perhaps I have, may I ask a question about this? Because, this is obviously has been going on. We've been reporting it multiple different times. I stopped by the village. We have the petition. But is it appropriate to call the police department, the non-emergency line to?
Chief?
Yes, excuse me. Yes, it is. If you call the non-emergency line, we would send somebody over to make sure, as you said, that the fire is tended, that there's water available, and that it's not too large. It has to have all those things. So I actually plan to put that on a watch for my officers.
Oh, great.
Now that I'm aware that there have been some violations, and I also plan to contact them and just make sure that they're clear on what the ordinance is.
Trustee Hollander.
One other thing, we're always looking for stuff to put in the newsletter. It's a perfect subject, maybe once a year, to remind our folks about the rules. And
Yes, I agreed.
Perhaps maybe even a survey of how, just to kind of get a taste of how residents feel about the subject matter. Maybe this is a bigger nuisance than we realize, or maybe not at all. Maybe most residents would prefer to be allowed to burn.
To help with the survey element, I run a consulting company that focuses on insight. So I'm happy to help with that. Thank you.
To burn or not to burn?
No, well, right. But send an anonymous survey, but we would create it, but you can administer it.
Sure. No, and we do have we have a fall event coming up. Probably wouldn't hurt to have somebody out at the, saying yes or no. Answer the survey at the fall event. Something to add to their, something to do. Okay.
Just one more question. Is there some sort of ordinance when it comes to the noise and leaf blowing specifically, or just?
I don't know the answer to that.
We do have something, but what do we have on leaf blowing, Chief? One of us is going to remember before.
Just falls under the noise ordinance. That they can only be done during the construction hours, which I believe are, thank you, 7 to 7.
there's an exception that if the homeowner does it him or herself, there is no restriction.
And the homeowner
No, I
does
think
that.
the noise ordinance is for everybody. So the homeowner can't do it after 7 p.m. Nobody can. What we do is, as far as cutting grass, you're not, the ordinance says not to cut grass on Sundays. If the homeowner is cutting the grass on Sundays, we haven't been telling them to stop.
A number of communities have recently allowed gas leaf blowers only, say, this is, I think, pretty true now along the North Shore in many communities, September 15 to December 15 or something like that, and in the spring for cleanup. And then after that, and you see a lot of the landscape companies now using battery-operated blowers in the summer months. So there are other communities which are looking at that issue also.
Probably in the same section. Same chapter.
Could be.
Anything else? Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for coming. And the board, we have our marching orders. We'll get some examples and have a discussion item and try to frame out something that is that will be more neighborly. Okay, is there anyone else wishing to address the board?
Lora Millman, Millman, Lora. Just to clarify what Max said, is that this gentleman is, if you saw what's in front of his house, he's chopping down trees. It's not like yard waste, like, oh, he has some leaves and he's burning leaves. I mean, he's logs that he's chopping down. He has some type of machine that he's sawing that into quarters. So he has the logs and he's cutting them into quarters and burning them. So if you look at it is, oh, he has logs. I just want to clarify that this is not just somebody who's burning yard waste. It's some kind of intentional thing that he might be doing. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
You could check on tree permits as well. If he's got a permit to take down the trees that he's taken down, or if they've simply fallen.
Or, excuse me, or Mayor, I just wanted to add quickly, or maybe he inherited these logs at his property when he purchased the property and he doesn't want to pay for removal of this waste. And so this is
Also
how
a
he's solving the
possibility.
problem.
Yeah. Are there any other comments on this issue? Again, thank you. And is there anyone else wishing to address the board? No, to take away your time. Thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to the first item of new business then. Approval of a revision to the Personnel Manual Appendix A and organizational chart is recommended by the Compensation and Benefits Committee. As you look at this information, please look at the Appendix A and the changes that have been made as an approval of a process. Appendix A sets out a process that the finance director, the Compensation and Benefits Committee follow in order to get to a budget to get to the board for approval. So it is an approval process. There was a great deal of work that went into this, looking at, in order to define the pay structure and grades and ranges that you see in there. You will see a bit more detail on that when we get to the budget and as we get to our budget number. But again, this is really an approval of a process. And I invite other members of the Comp and Benefits Committee to chime in if I've missed the point on that. The organizational chart, we've been working on it for a long period of time, and I think it's looking pretty good. I think it defines who does what and the various departments in the village. So with that, Trustee Hollander, did you have a comment, please?
Yeah, on item 7C, there's not a page number, at least that I can see it. Item 7 is salary progression, and section C is individual movement through salary range. And the red line indicates something that was to be added. And if I read it, just to make certain I'm understanding this, employees may not be compensated above the maximum compensation indicated for their salary range unless specifically authorized by the village president.
For exceptional performance and accompanied by appropriate documentation. Okay, we're looking at the same thing then, yes.
So my question is, when I asked the village attorney, he said that the salary range was limited by the budget that we set aside, but this appears to indicate that there is no upper limit to what the president or the mayor could allow for salary. Am I misreading that? It says that the village president is not limited.
My understanding is that the salary budget is a global max. And the idea of this is that we have positions and we have ranges for each position with a minimum, mid, and maximum. So you have, for example, an employee who is either doing exceptional work, also employees, I think there's another discussion here someplace else of an employee who's due to longevity is just at the maximum. So generally speaking, the idea was not to compensate people above the maximum point because that's the whole point of the range, to set a maximum. But that if there was an exceptional performance or reason for doing so, the village president could do that. They still would have to do that within the compass of the salary budget. It just means that they wouldn't be automatically restricted from proposing an increase above the maximum simply because the employee had reached the maximum in that range.
I understand there's a up to 10% bonus, which I understand, but I don't read this as being limited by any way. It says village president has that authority.
Well, appropriate documentation, I would think it does refer to the budget.
I think what we could do is tie this. There's a context in this entire appendix that there's a process that includes a salary budget. So when you read a sentence like that as a standalone, you may say, well, it just says they could increase it. But if you read the entire Appendix A, I would say it's indicating that it's within a salary budget that's approved. But we can tag this back to that concept and wherever we need to make sure it's not hanging out there and looks like it's standing alone.
I would prefer that if you can. Thank you.
Okay, and just to be clear, the village president or the finance director, and which is said in another place.
Doesn't say that.
If you
There's
look
only
at
it says
section,
village president. I mean, you can correct it. I'm just thinking
back
it
up
should be a little bit better stated. That was all.
Section 6, the village president may delegate various duties in formulating and presenting the annual salary budget to the finance director or other designees. Trustee Clayton, please.
The sentence before the sentence that trustee Hollander is referring to says employees may not be compensated above the maximum indicated for their salary range unless an exception is approved by the village board. Those two sentences seem to be in conflict with each other.
I think maybe we should go back and
Okay. Well,
adjust this.
I support the concept. I just think we better,
a little rewording.
I agree with that.
And the organizational chart, maybe we'll separate those two then. If you'd like us to bring back the Appendix A for another look, we will be bringing the personnel manual back for its annual scrub. And we can bring Appendix A back at that point. But that kind of leaves us a little, and we will be following this process for the workshop that's coming up.
Just to clarify on the personnel manual, you know, our legislators are very gifted. They're capable of coming up with new interpretations and guidances every year. And so we received a new set of guidelines from the EEOC, approximately 75 pages long, and we're advised that we should incorporate them into our personnel manual in some manner. So, you know, it's just best practice to try and keep abreast of these changes. We'll have some more changes. I don't think we can do the personnel manual and say it's good for 5 years like we used to. It just doesn't work anymore. So.
Are there any other, I'm sorry, say again? Trustee Clayton?
It seems to me that we could strike the entire addition from this and approve the Appendix A because the only way the board would approve compensation above the maximum would be if there was documentation of exceptional performance. So if we just removed the highlighted thing, then the highlighted sentence, then we could approve this as is. And we could get it done.
Sounds good.
So
and
I
that
would
be the
move-
sentence beginning employees, the last sentence in the first paragraph of section C then.
Right.
Correct? Beginning employees? Okay.
Yeah. So I would move the approval of Appendix A. Is that appropriate? Subject to the removal of that sentence.
I would second that.
Are there any other questions or comments? No. No. That was a descriptor, personnel manual appendix A. Oh, yeah. No, we can do that separately if you like. Yeah. We've got a motion on the floor then to approve with the removal of that last sentence. Correct? Correct? Okay, well, no money, but voice vote? No.
I would do a roll call.
Roll call? How about a roll call? Roll call, please.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great. And the organizational chart?
Well, one of the things that we do with this, by the way, is that we're required to post it on we're supposed to be posting it on our website so that anybody visiting the website can ascertain what the structure of the village is. So its purpose is to be broadly informative, not, it's not a personnel chart, but it's an organizational chart.
Helpful in understanding who does what and where those things should be done, not. Trustee Eastman, please.
Can I ask a question about the
Absolutely.
mayor/chief administrative officer? Is that just to show that potentially at some point you could have a village manager? Or are we considering bringing that issue back for discussion? Or is it just more illustrative of who could assume that position?
All of the above?
That might be the case.
Sometime earlier, we did discuss, the board discussed the idea of a village manager or a village administrator. And the job of the mayor at this point really is the chief administrator officer. So it describes what's currently happening, and in the future, it describes what could happen. So I think, to your point, yes.
But there is no more calculated thought about addressing that issue
No,
going forward.
no,
Okay.
no,
I just wondered because it
no.
caught my eye when I was looking at
Yeah,
it.
no. I think that could be coming, but it's not something that, right. Okay. Trustee Dickon, please.
Had a comment. For somebody who's a visual, this is great. I love this. So, and for a village as small as ours, people wear a lot of different hats, and this really helps with visualizing in terms of who does what and who reports to whom and how the village works. So thank you for putting this together. And this level of detail is.
Thank you to our village clerk, Danny Moore, who actually did this.
Thank you to our village clerk.
Yes. Multi-talented, multi-skilled. Trustee Hollander, please.
Under the Department of Community Services, under the Planning Services Support, there's a note that the Community Service Officer is to support the village board and staff, which I agree with. I think that's great, but that doesn't apply to the finance director, and you may want to add that to his or her role as well, so that the village board of trustees can look to the finance director for support.
Actually, that's true of all.
Yes, but these were the only two graphics that I saw.
No, yeah, the support of the village board, plan commissions, and so, well, plan commission especially, and the director of community services. But generally speaking, they support all of.
I understand. I was just suggesting that we add that support to the finance director as well.
We can do that.
I'm okay with that. I did have, separate from that, another couple of comments on page 47 under community services, in that same area that Trustee Hollander was talking about, with advisory and support. We should probably just include the ZBA, since we already highlight the plan commission in there. And on the same page, I think it's probably covered throughout, but all the way on the right, where it talks about forestry/drainage, maybe one of the bullet points should specifically say stormwater under forestry health, land management, environmental quality, and wetlands. I'm sorry, wetlands.
Sure. Director Witt, do you want to add anything to the Finance Department?
No, but I'm glad that he willingly is taking
I
some of the
couldn't
load
help it.
for
I'm so
support to the
sorry.
village
Not
board
really.
off of me.
Mayor, I have another comment.
You absolutely could. Trustee Dickon, please.
So I know our chief of police also wears the chief of technology hat, and it's great, but do we want to add this somewhere on the organizational chart in terms of whose responsibility this actually falls on long term? And I don't think this part actually falls under communications. This is more bigger than communications. This is more of a IT type issue.
I told you, I passed the hat to the finance director when we hired him, so.
Well, touche, that is true. Yeah.
I don't think it's our police chief's job to be a chief technology officer. It just so
Oh.
happens we have one
Yeah.
who does it, but I would not put that in a job description for whoever the next police chief is.
Oh, only if we can get away with it again.
I mean, we're such a lean village that we have a police department, a finance department, but we don't have what in most villages would be called the administration or administrative department, which is the sort of the catch-all for all these functions. Maybe that's.
I was thinking that's probably the office of the village clerk. Sorry about your luck. Yeah, if you come under the village clerk, administrative support, meet mayor's directives. There are a lot of, yeah, there's administration under there. All right, so let's see, you got what? You got,
In finance on page 46 in the bottom corner, it does discuss contracted services such as payroll and HR services. I could see it being appropriate to include the contracted IT services, not to say that I would be the only one who would interact, because there's a lot of technology that the police department uses that they have a little bit more knowledge of, but just helping with oversight and just kind of smoothing the process of making sure that things get done.
I think that makes
you
perfect
won.
sense.
I just put it down here.
Yeah, basically, our IT people are reporting to both of us, depending on what the issue is or just which one of us is covering it. So it's fine for me to put it under there. But, we both talk to him talk to the company regularly. And we both handle a lot of the IT in our buildings. So
Maybe rather than working the issue here at a board meeting, we can fine tune it and bring it back.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. And if you can send your comments to, let me think. Send any comments, send any additional comments to our village clerk, please. And we'll bring it back. Okay. All right, well, I'm done. Okay, next item of new business. Thank you for those comments, though, please, thank you. Approval of resolutions approving the subdivision plan and conveyance to the fire district. First item is approval of a resolution approving a final subdivision plat for Federal Life, and the second is approval of a resolution approving the conveyance. And I will ask our village attorney to please lead us through those. Thank you.
If you turn to the memo, I believe it begins on page 48 of the packet. Really tried to lay out for the board what's going on here. One of the pictures that we copied and pasted in here was as one of the site plans. Right now there's versions A, B through E. There'll probably be 5 more, but this is one of the versions of the site plan that the fire district has been looking at. Just to sort of orient you with the site. One of the things, I'm on page 49 of the packet, one of the things this is showing is no direct access to Deerfield Road. The fire district spent the better part of the summer trying to work some approval through the county, thinking that coming out directly onto Deerfield Road would be better for it. Um, Although reasonable people can disagree, the county was very concerned. At that particular location happens to be just where an extra right turn lane going westbound to Milwaukee appears, just at the east boundary of the federal life site on Deerfield Road. There'll suddenly be an extra lane. So as cars are proceeding west on Deerfield and they know the area, they'll start to think, if I pull over to the right, I'll be in the turn lane and I'll scoot past all of these cars waiting to get through the intersection. It's just as cars are scooting over to the right, they could hit the apron from the fire department. And so there were a lot of questions about how to measure the line of sight. What is the speed the cars would be going? What would the typical driver see? It's just not, you're not expecting an intersection at that point. Ultimately, if when there's a call here and there's cars backed up on, I know I'm supposed to look straight. How am I doing?
You're doing great.
Good. If there are cars backed up on Deerfield Road, the fire department will have the ability to cause a change in the traffic lights in Milwaukee. They'll be able to give a green light to the cars on Deerfield Road so they can get going and get out of the way, and change the light for the cars on Milwaukee to red. I'm simplifying it, but basically they can rig the lights so that people can get out of their way. Well, if you think about a typical, busy time when cars are backed up, I don't think the county ever promised us there would never be cars backed up. Once they've done these improvements, there'll be cars. When the fire district comes out and they check that signal, it's not as if all of the cars that are in their way disappear in 3 or 4 seconds. It's going to take all of those cars a while. So our village engineer actually made this point to me. Chris's earliest training was as a traffic engineer. He said, whether they come out directly onto Deerfield Road or whether they come out on the access road, those few extra seconds are really just the seconds it may take some of the cars to just pull over to the side or get out of the way. It's probably not going to affect the time it takes them to get to Milwaukee in any event. The county has already said that it makes a lot more sense for them to come out at a recognizable intersection. The fire district was not completely, I think some of their consultants thought it was not as good. Anyway, the argument is over at this point. It would take a long time, a lot of studies, and I think the fire district has said we can make this work. So they will come out on the access road, at which there very well could be a signal one day, which you would think would be an advantage. So the original access road that the village designed with the help of a number of consultants was this very wavy, curvy thing. There's no legal requirement that it take that shape. It was done for aesthetic reasons. It was simply a graceful curve following the contours of the detention. It does connect to Colonial Court at precisely the right place, but point A at Colonial Court and point B at Deerfield Road are the only two fixed points. Everything else between those 2 points can be varied. You can't go through the middle of the detention, but it doesn't have to be that shape. Director Witt looked at that curved road and said that makes it more difficult for the fire engines to come out onto the access road because they have to make such a wide sweeping turn. So if you turn to the next page in the packet, our design engineer attempted to straighten the access road. It will still curve, and it will still meet at Colonial Court if we make it go that far in exactly the place it needs to go. But this configuration will make it easier for the fire engines to turn onto the access road. And they may not be coming out of the site plan that I showed on the preceding page. We don't know quite how the building is going to be oriented. But this will help. It also will help with the way cars are stacked on the road, meaning if cars are on the access road waiting to get out into Deerfield, they'll be in a configuration that makes them easier for them to pull out of the way of a fire engine that's coming through. Another option we discussed with the fire district is actually widening the access road and adding another 12 feet in width of a lane that would be dedicated for the fire station only. So that it could be sort of a striped lane that nobody's supposed to be in. And that would make it even simpler for them to get out. But there's not that much traffic on the access road. There may not be anyone for a while except the fire station initially. So this is a pretty workable solution for a number of designs that they can come up with on their site. We have shared this with the fire district. We have shared this with the county. The plan commission has reviewed it. So in terms of a subdivision, at one point we were, and we will probably do much more. We'll probably have a lot just for the access road. We'll probably divide the detention areas once they're completely defined into lots. And the northwest quadrant of the site that we hope to retain for other uses can be its own standalone lot. We'll do that for a number of reasons. One is we have to put on the detention areas, they have to have recorded restrictions. It'll be easier to record those restrictions only against the areas that they govern. They'll only govern the detention areas, so we wouldn't want to record those restrictions against other parts of the site. So there will be a need to subdivide further. Another advantage, for example, of straightening the road, our engineer thinks, is that we can expand the existing detention on the southwest there a little bit more than had originally been planned. There'd be more room to do that. That gives us more storage and therefore less of a need to struggle against the woodland area to the north of the property. We'll be able to fit the detention in a little bit better. So this is just a sort of an example of the kind of give and take that we've gone through in the design process. So there's two lots that are created by this plat. One lot is the lot that the fire district understands would be coming to it. And at the closing, when we get ready to close with Federal Life, we'll record the plat. We'll have a deed from Federal Life to the village of both lots, and then the village will convey the fire district lot to the fire district, all at the same closing. And the purpose of the resolution is for the board to approve the final subdivision plat for Federal Life subdivision. And I say federal final, that means not that it won't be changed again. But in our subdivision code, we have both a preliminary and a final approval. This would be a final approval of a plat that actually we expect to come back to the board with amendments in the future.
Is there any discussion? Trustee Hollander, please.
I would just put forth, or at least personally would like to make clear that nothing in any of our discussions commits the village to complete the access road to Colonial Courts. And I understand the plat doesn't show it, but we referred to it several times in the discussions. This may be anticipated in the future, but I do not in any way want to indicate that the board is committed to doing that or make any promises.
There's nothing in our agreement with the fire district or the county that requires that. And as I've said before, it's up to the board to decide what to do with that access road. We have to provide this much of it for the fire district. Beyond that, we have to decide what we want to do.
I was referring more to the fixed points of Colonial Court and Deerfield Road.
Well, and I
agree. Yeah. I'm just saying I don't want it to be misinterpreted, at least from my personal viewpoint, that there is no commitment at this point in time to connect to Colonial Court.
I think the decision point for the board will be, the designer is going to be designing the grading improvements. The intent has all along been to grade for the road because of the cost of moving earth. We're going to be grading this whole site. We're going to have a lot of dirt to put someplace and to move. So we're going to create the base for the road all the way to Colonial Court. And that work will be part of the initial phase of grading work. When the board decides on how much to actually go to the final course on the pavement and how much to actually do with the road, that'll be a separate decision. But it'll come before the board at that time. there's nothing that requires us to pay, even if we can do the rough grading, we can have a, what did you call it, a T intersection.
Yeah.
We can,
Stop it.
we can stop it. We can pave it to a point, stop it and say that's it, even if, but in order to have the usability of the whole site for the future, you try and do all the grading up front once, I think.
Any other
There's also an
discussion?
economy of cost that should be considered once we get to that decision-making time. To do the grading, to do the build-up of the base for the road, and potentially for doing the road itself. Would certainly be a lot cheaper to do it at the same time we're doing the rest of the roadway coming in. But it's not necessary for access for the fire department.
I have no objection to getting it prepared and using the dirt and the time. It was that
Yeah.
not to make it, to apply any commitment to make the connection at this point in time.
You wouldn't want any third party to be misled.
That, yes, nor a second party.
Or a second party.
Or, yes, there is no, we're not asking for that commitment at all tonight. This is just this subdivision plan for right now.
Are there any other questions?
I would move we approve it.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Any further questions on this resolution or any detail on the plan? If not, roll call, please.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Deacon.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next resolution is to approve the conveyance of the parcel to the Fire Protection District, which would be Lot 1 on the plat. I think I explained in the memo, there are a number of ways in which we could authorize this conveyance. We chose one way that is widely accepted and practiced and works both for us as a home rule community and also works for the fire district since it's not a home rule unit of government. They can rely on the same act on their part. So we're just looking for approval. This essentially is completing what we've agreed we would do in our intergovernmental agreement with the fire district.
Discussion.
I would
Trustee
move that
Hollander.
we approve it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments on the conveyance and the resolution for conveyance? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Deacon.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item of business is approval to purchase a police vehicle. Chief, would you like to discuss that with us, please?
Thank you. So we are next scheduled to purchase a new police car in 2025. I did not budget for the purchase of another new police car in 2024. But in looking at our repair budget, the 2021 Dodge Durango police vehicle that we were planning on auctioning in 2025 has been down a lot, and it's actually costing us 63% of the repairs that we've made this year have been to that car for a 6-car fleet, and we're over budget because of that car. We didn't have good luck with other Durangos we purchased at the same time, so I would like to move up to buy a car early so we can stop. So we can just get that on the roads that much sooner and get rid of the Durango. We're currently transitioning our fleet back to Tahoes due to reliability issues with the Dodge Durangos that we previously purchased. Also, our Chevy dealer, our local Chevy dealer, Tasca Chevrolet, where we typically buy our cars, has in Wheeling, has told us that the price of the police package Tahoe is going to increase by approximately $10,000 in 2025. They couldn't find us at 2024, but my fleet manager did find me a 2024 police package Tahoe at the Caro Auto Group in Iowa. And the total price for that car, including a lot of the equipment that we typically have installed locally, would be $71,800 $820. Some of the things that they don't have installed, we would be spending approximately, it's actually, I wrote in here $8,000 for remaining equipment installation at MP Communications MPC Communications in Wheeling, but I actually have their quote now, and it's $7,600, so it'd be a little under that. And then plus striping, the graphic lettering from Suburban Accents would be $675 for a total expenditure of it'd be less than $79,995, but no more than that. I did speak with the finance director Vasquez about it, and he told me that there were a number of projects that were part of the 2024 capital funds budget that are not moving forward this year. So we do have the capacity in the capital budget for the purchase. In addition to the information I just gave you on the car that I'd like to purchase, a question was also posed to me about other ecologically sound alternatives to gas. So as many of you may recall, we did order a Ford Explorer hybrid last year. And at the time when we ordered it, several local departments had their orders for that vehicle canceled right after they made their orders. Ours was not canceled until several months later, when there were very few cars to be had. They did cancel us. So we had to scramble, and we were able to find a Ford Explorer non-hybrid. It was the only police car that we could find, and we did need a car pretty badly at the time. But now we have since found out that many of the departments that were initially happy with their hybrids are now having major mechanical problems with them, and they're not ordering more of those Ford, which is the pretty much the standard police hybrid that departments were ordering. Now, I don't know of anybody using electric vehicles in their patrol fleet yet. I'm aware that there is a new electric vehicle, Chevy Trailblazer police package, but it's new and we're a smaller department. Again, I wouldn't want to, we actually have 3 primary marked cars that we use. I really wouldn't want one of them to be a test case with the Chevy Trailblazer, or there's also a Tesla out there that I'm not hearing good things about either. So I wouldn't really want to be the first one to try one of these cars. Additionally, with one car being 33% of our primary patrol cars, we would have to actually get more cars if we were to go electric, because with the current charging technology, we would need to purchase extra cars so that we could, if we had 3 cars come in the morning, we couldn't hand them off to 3 officers coming on because they'd have to be charged for quite a while. So it would require extra cars. I've also been hearing that electric cars have been problematic, have had problems in extreme cold, which we do experience here, as far as not running and not being able to charge. So that's why I'm recommending that we purchase a car this year, and that it be the Chevrolet Tahoe.
Are there any questions from our trustees? Trustee Clayton, please.
Recognizing everything that you just said about the non-fossil fuel cars, I think that it's just important to recognize that this is sustainability is a serious thing for the village, and we really want to keep on looking for alternatives for the fossil fuel vehicles. If there are now no alternatives now, so be it. But we want to try to find them in the future if we can.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I might throw on the strike at the port. Your timing is good.
It's another reason I did mention that to you, and I forgot to mention it tonight. Thank you.
Yeah.
That it might be hard to get to 2025 depending on how the strike goes.
Yeah.
So we have a car that they're holding for us right now. We can get that car if the board approves it. 2025, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Any further discussion? Do I have a motion for approval of the purchase, please?
Can I make a quick correction?
Oh.
The finance director just pointed out that I had a typo in there. The actual amount with all the equipment and the striping is actually $80,495.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Clayton?
Aye.
Trustee Dickon?
Aye.
Trustee Eastman?
Aye.
Trustee Hollander? Motion passes.
Thank you. Next item, discussion of an amendment to the Ecological Cost Share Programs Ordinance. This is for discussion at this point. We've had some questions and some situations arise, and it seems that we do need to make some revisions. Right now, the cost share program is tied to the property, and there's a one-time use of the programs, and doesn't seem to make much sense. And I used controlled burns as an example, where you'd like to do it every, 4 or 5 years, something like that. So we wanted to bring this to the board for discussion, for the board's comments, and any further items that they thought might need revised in that particular ordinance. Trustee Hollander, please.
Yeah, I'm guilty. We've had a burn every 3 years, now 3 times over 9 years, and probably surely been reimbursed for 1, but I'm not paying you back. There is.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
mean,
been
who knew, right?
Yeah, I think we've gotten many years' experience of the program, and it probably is due for a look-see and see if we can't pick up some loopholes that were inadvertent when it was initially performed.
I think it was such a different program, and at that point in time, it was really unclear exactly how that would work. But we do have good controls in place. Our village ecologist does go out, and he does require that a consultation be made. And just recently, he refused an application because somebody wanted to keep planting something that said you don't need that anymore. Again, we've got a built-in control with our ecologist. We'd like to come back to you then with some others. And again, from a financial perspective, it's been pretty dependable and controllable. And you can see from the map that the entire village has really benefited from these programs. So we'll come back to you. Are there any other additions or comments that you'd like to make? Trustee Clayton, please.
Just that it's not only a question of coming back to the same property again, but it's also the follow-up to some of the first steps that have been taken.
Precisely.
We just invested a lot of money naturalizing the front part of our acreage, and the follow-up cost to keep it the way it is 50% of the original cost of the project, which we did get reimbursed for the cost sharing, but we don't get reimbursed anything for the follow-up, which is essential to maintaining where we want to go. So if we could take another look at that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. The one property thing just kind of stuck to me, but you can understand why, back when it first started. If you think of anything else, let's see, who should you send those comments to? Yes, there he is. He raised his hand yet again. If you've got further, otherwise we'll take it up with the village ecologist and see what his recommendations are. He's the guy on the ground there.
I have a quick question.
Oh, yes, Trustee Dickon, please.
When you say one ecological consultation per property, what happens if there's new ownership? Should the new owner?
There you go.
The original idea wasn't that. The idea was that you could participate. There were 9 programs. You could
Right.
participate in each program once, but that would already be 9 participations and not keep going back to the well. And the original concern the board had was, before they had any experience with it, that would it be abused? Would it be unfairly used by a small group of people? Would it, so that was the original intent of that rule. And I think it's.
See, as an owner may request that the village transfer a cost share permit to a new owner.
Thank
So
you.
think about that at closing. Trustee Smith,
I
please.
guess the other point I'd raise too that I know has come up in some RPC discussions is, right, the issue of, do you have to use an approved provider, or is
Oh.
it something that you can do yourself with some sort of guidance
So,
from Steve?
yeah.
Or that's another, I mean, because
That's been out there for a long time.
I know it's been out there for a long time, but I mean, I'm somewhat sympathetic to the idea of, yeah, I mean, we want to encourage people to do things in any way.
So
There's a reasonable way to do it, driving down the cost for them.
All right.
Perhaps not the
Probably should
controlled
look at
burn, though.
maybe not. I mean, we can look at all those.
definitely not the control
We
board.
can look at all those options. I mean, you know, the tenor of the debate years ago when this was considered was, let's be good stewards of public money. And every time we design a program like this, or we were always looking for sort of default guardrails that keep it from, you know, right now we know our village ecologists, you kind of know, you know, everything, but these things take on a life of their own. So sometimes you put in rules that seem a little unduly restrictive at first because you're trying to make sure that you don't, you know, but
Break the bank.
yeah, but, you know, we can certainly look at these things now that we have this experience.
Yeah, I mean, maybe something like shrubs, right? I mean, that's something where I think the homeowner, the native trees and shrubs, maybe that's the area where, it makes sense to look at.
We'll speak with Steve and see what his recommendations are, and bring something back for the board's review. Just wanted to bring it to you first rather than show up with an ordinance. So again, if any further comments, send them in. Last item of new business, discussion of communications regarding quarterly mailing to village residents. Trustee Dickon, would you like to lead us through that, please? Oh, I can start with yeah. There's a short paragraph, couple of paragraphs in there about a little bit on the history, the Village Voice, and then we went from print to electronic. And
We're just going to put up the postcards so that our audience could see the visuals.
I'm like, what's going on? I did not know that. Okay. Okay. So now we're talking about mailers. So if you'd like to continue.
Okay. So to repeat what the mayor had said, that in the past, the village residents had relied on village-wide printed publication called the Village Voice, which went out somewhere between 4 to 6 times per year, and was a consolidation of past events and things that are coming up on the radar. Some things were relevant, some things were way relevant, but I certainly had a strong feeling that many residents liked having a physical mailer. And, the mailer came with a cost. Before going to print, it cost the village $30,516 to produce this mailing. And this was a 2022 figure. I think we as the village owe it to the residents to make sure that they stay informed. And what I'm proposing is a very inexpensive yet sustainable and always relevant piece that would go out to the residents 4 times a year. This looks a little blurry. I don't know if you can see. Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so if you could go back to the previous page, please. Next one, please. The following page, please. And then, okay. So what you're seeing here is a template, which will be pretty much generic and will only switch with seasonality. So we've got, the fall version, you'll see kids trick-or-treating. If you've got winter, you'll see a snowman, if we have snow. But what I'm proposing is a seasonal postcard that would go out right after the quarterly finance report would be published. And if we could go back 1 page, please. the back of the postcard would be consistent for all of the 4 mailings. And what you see, I don't know if you could see this well, but there are 6 QR codes on this postcard. And the point of these QR codes is these are short links which you can scan with your phone, which will take you directly to the area that is, the subject matter. So we've got one for news and events and police reports. We've got one for the village's financial health. We've got the water quality report, meetings, agendas, and minutes, the cost share programs, and permits and applications. So I found that those 6 items were the key things that resident could actually really say, hey, I didn't know that, you needed a permit to remove a tree, or we're buying another police vehicle, or do we really need a police vehicle? But, this is something that allows residents, I'm not trying to pick any booths, I'm just giving this as an example, but scanning these QR codes will take the user directly to that part of the website, which will have the most up-to-date information regardless of when you access it. So these QR codes won't change. You may have seen these sent out recently, just in general mailings. Many companies that communicate, they prefer sending out QR codes than actual URLs, because that makes sure that you don't have a typo when you're typing these in. And all you do is you scan these with your phone. You may have seen these in restaurants from menus. You may have seen these whenever there's a public notice that goes out, when there is a lawsuit going on and you could be part of that lawsuit. You could scan, get to the form, and fill out the form online. So these are becoming more and more common. But to bring me back to the point that, the purpose of having this postcard, there's 2 purposes. One is to actually get folks to sign up for the village newsletter, for the village's online newsletter, because ideally, in the perfect world, everybody would be signed up and everybody would know what's going on. We know that that's not going to happen. We also know that there are residents who are not very computer literate, who may never use their phone to scan a QR code, which is why I'm not sure why this came out in black and white. This is actually in color. There's a line that says that you may request a printed copy of the finance report, the water quality report, and any permit applications by contacting the village. So these are key areas where I really feel that we owe this to our residents, in making sure that they're informed. In terms of costs, I'm requesting a budget for a 2-year program, which would be the mailing of 8 postcards per year, 1 per quarter. And I'm requesting a budget of $6,000, which is actually a little bit more than I'm anticipating for these costs to actually be, primarily because I just wanted to have that cushion pillow, since USPS has raised their postage rates 6 times in the last 2 years. So I just wanted to make sure we had some extra money. In terms of staff's involvement, this is a templated design, and I've spoken with Dana, who would probably be the one working on this. Dana works for the police department, and she has been also responsible for publishing the electronic newsletter. In terms of her involvement, I'm not anticipating more than an hour per mailing. Everything will be set up as a template. If you could switch to the next page, please. And the only thing she'd need to update is the highlights section. So this would be, hey, we've got a Halloween party coming up. We've got, the 3rd quarter finance report, register to vote on November 5th at the village hall, So things like that, things that are on the radar and coming up in the next quarter is what you'll see on the front. And then in bouncing this idea around with the mayor came back to me and said, well, in 2015, the village has done a comprehensive survey, which was a mailed out survey consisting of multiple pages. I vaguely remember, I think I filled one out. I haven't seen a copy of it in a long time, but I can't agree more that we're way overdue. With that said, I think we need to take a couple steps back and realize that things have changed in terms of how data is collected today. I think people are used to filling out things on their phone, and they hate long surveys. So I'm proposing that we actually incorporate something different into our communication strategy where we seek residents' opinions on a more frequent basis rather than send out a gigantic survey that's God knows how many pages and then get a low response rate. Because we're not, what are we looking to learn? If we're looking to find out demographics, that data is accessible and it's very accurate, and we can purchase it for less money than it would cost us to send out a survey. So I think in terms of doing the comprehensive survey, the key questions would be, what are we trying to learn, and how will we use this information once we get it back?
Trustee Hollander, please.
Yeah, I would propose that we have a 2-year pilot program at $7,500 a year, which asking the board to approve $15,000 over a 2-year period of time for this program.
Is that a motion?
$7,500.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, the memo was asking for 6. That's why I was
I
kind of
understand.
flipping here.
But the
Okay.
motion I'm making is for $7,500 for 2
Yeah,
years.
I heard that. Trustee Clayton, please.
Just a little confusion. The postcard is a one-way communication from the village to the resident, and that's what we're funding.
Correct. Yeah, the survey is a whole separate
The survey is a whole
conversation.
separate topic and
Correct.
has nothing to do.
Nothing to do with
this.
the budget that I'm requesting for this
Thank-
project.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Trustee Diggin.
Aye.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I think it's trustee. Okay, moving on to old business. Approval of an ordinance amending and restating certain provisions of the Riverwoods Insurance and Indemnity Ordinance. Second reading and approval. Do I have a motion for second reading and approval, please?
So moved.
Is there a second, please?
Second.
Discussion,
There are
please.
no changes since the last version before you. I did have a long conversation with Rick Jemerson and with our insurance broker, and he was comfortable with the language once we were done talking.
Yes. Are there any other questions or comments on this? Trustee Clayton, please.
Just in going through it after the first reading, on page 95, section 811(5)B, we have a striking of a paragraph and then a insertion of a paragraph that's much more general. We took out a whole bunch of specific references to various people who work with the village, and I just wanted to understand that.
So what we decided is to have a simpler provision because we hand this out so many times. And the language we added said, or such other parties as may be specified by the village. We have service providers, we have consultants, we have a lot of people for whom this broader language just is a little over the top. And so we're trying to make it a little more user-friendly so we get more compliance out of the gate. And if there's a particular instance where someone is doing a lot of work, construction work on a private street, and we're worried about something, we can always expand the list of additional insured. Some of this language, you don't find language about homeowner associations. Typically in insurance provision, this was suggested to us many years ago by former trustee, used to do a lot of insurance broker work, but our current insurance advisor was comfortable with the language that we had.
Are there any other questions? Comments? Roll call, please.
Trustee Eastman.
Aye.
Trustee Hollander.
Aye.
Trustee Clayton.
Aye.
Trustee Diggin.
Aye.
Motion passes.
It's an ordinance, I believe.
Oh, ordinance number. Oh, 241014.
Ordinance 241014.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to committee reports, Finance and Economic Development. Trustee Clayton, please.
Our finance director took us through most of it. We're meeting tomorrow to go over all the prep work for the October workshop. That's all I got.
Are there any questions? Okay, moving on, Communications. Trustee Dickon, please.
The village website has gone through a transition, and I must report that it wasn't the smoothest one by far. Unfortunately, the newsletter feature did not transfer over, so it has been sent out manually by Dana. Thank her, please, on my behalf for all of her hard work. And we're working on optimizing this process through a feature called Constant Contact, which is a common tool used for mass email communications. Hopefully we'll get something this week to go out automatically to relieve Dana from all the manual work. That's all I've got.
Are there any questions? Okay. Woodlands, Ecology, Legal. Trustee Eastman, please.
Nothing to report.
Land Use and Roads. Trustee Hollander, please.
I had a query from someone in Thorngate. They were worried about kids not being able to ride safely along Saunders Road. There was no crosswalk at Saunders and Deerfield. Made sense to me. Explained that at the Deerfield Road project, there's going to be a sidewalk on that portion, and there will be crosswalks at Deerfield and Saunders at the completion, which is what she was asking for. She wanted to know if we could do that before the Deerfield project, and I said it's unlikely we would do that when it was still close to being completed, and that it was not in the present budget, but that we would, by the time we were going to do the new budget, it would be already there.
Any questions for Trustee Hollander? Trustee Jamerson is not with us this evening. Trustee Smith is not with us this evening. Sustainability and Climate Action, please. Chair Brightcott.
The Sustainability Task Force continues to meet, and we are still working on prioritization. Right now, we are prioritizing the priorities so it can fit into a plan meaningfully. And we will work on these further prioritizations, get clarification of the priorities, and then we will start drafting the plan. So it is moving along very well.
Go ahead. Are there any questions or comments for our chair? Thank you. Strategic Land Use, Trustee Clayton and Trustee Hollander.
We have, I don't know, Henry, you want to go ahead? We've had a second meeting with Tesca. During that meeting, we got a list of possible uses for public property, which was kind of fun to look through. And we're going to then try to map that against some of the properties that we have, depending on the physical characteristics of those properties. We are proposing right at the moment, in order to gather resident input, that Tesca is designing a questionnaire that goes property by property and lays out these uses against possible uses against each property. And then we hope to have a hyperlink on the website that will take them into the survey that we're hoping to complete. I need to be with Director Witt and Vivian on the best way and timing to get whatever information we have that's in the property files for each one of those properties. And I want to make sure that it's done in an orderly way where this is not an urgent matter. So when we have time to do that, we will. We have compiled all the land use references at this point in the comprehensive plan. We have begun the process of developing maps. We got a first feedback from Gewalt, and we're looking to fine tune that a little bit. And the next time we're going to get together is in mid-November when TESC is coming back to the board to do the PUD or RFD or whatever the right initials are.
RPD.
RPD, thank you. Workshop. So we're not going to meet again until November. That has a lot to do with travel schedules and the timing of a number of different things. So we've got a lot going on, and we're moving forward, but it's going to be at a controlled pace.
Sounds good. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, moving on. No reason to go into executive session. Please note all the next times and dates. The workshop on the 15th starts at 6. Food will be there. We've rescheduled the first meeting in November to a Wednesday, and we also have a workshop, a second meeting in November. So please note those dates. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Oops.